Hey, leader, welcome to the Playing in the Sandbox podcast. I'm Tammy J. Bond, your host, and thrilled to have you join me. This is the launching of our new Playing in the Sandbox podcast recording studio. And as I've been so full with the schedule of the work and the clients and then recording, I actually decided to take a pause this week and not get you fresh new content. I'm actually pulling from the archives something I did many years ago in an audio teaching on powerful questions. So in the Sandbox today, we're going to be diving into the reasons why asking powerful questions are necessary, how you construct a powerful questions, and the things to watch out for, to notice for in body language and in facial expressions and in tone when you're not only asking, but also when you're receiving questions back from other people. So grab your pen and paper, jump on in, take a listen to this audio. I know you're going to enjoy it immensely, and I know you're going to get some new tips, tools, and strategies that you can use in your leadership, you can use with your teams, and you can start to train up others around you how to ask and receive powerful questions in the workplace. Take a listen in the Sandbox. See you in there. This is the Masterful Conversations audio series, and in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about asking powerful questions. So let's get ready. Let's get our pen and paper ready, because I know you're going to want to take lots of notes on this. And I want to encourage you to get a hold of your copy of my book, Playing in the Sandbox. Get that out also while you're listening to this, because there are powerful questions at the end of every chapter in my book that helps you in each content area, each subject matter area. And I did that very intentionally. There's over 200 powerful questions that you can ask yourself, you can ask your team, you ask others to really evoke a deeper understanding of any situation. And I put them in there because I've been passionate about asking powerful questions and challenging people to think differently and think outside their box and look at what kind of powerful questions they can ask in their situation. And I remember years ago when I was going through an advanced course in coach training and certification, and I had one of the instructors who'd been a coach for years just look at me and say, "You have a skill of asking the most powerful questions. You should write a book of powerful questions." And it made me chuckle back then, because I just have always asked questions. And if you were listening to earlier teachings in this series, you've heard me tell the story about my fourth grade teacher and who used to throw hefty markers at me and tell me to shut up and stop asking questions. And I knew at a very young age, asking questions got a response or got a reaction. Now, it took me a lot of years to learn how to use them effectively. Let me say that again. It took me a lot of years to learn how to use powerful questions effectively, not to evoke frustration and anger in people like I used to do as a child, but to evoke thought and to evoke a good conversation or to evoke change. So powerful questions, well placed, can transform a conversation probably in the most quickest way. And it's something that you as the asker needs to be trained how to ask them and practice how to ask them, but also the person that you're engaged with, there's some education that can happen there so that they don't hear it as judgment, that they understand your intention is to understand versus judge. And of course, as we've talked about in earlier messages in this series, we always check in first with our own intention and ask ourselves, why am I reacting in a specific situation? Should you be? Understand your heart motives first before you ask any questions, right? Well, using powerful questions is the same model. Check in with yourself to understand what it is you need to know why you need to know it, and what will benefit you and the other party by knowing, right? By asking this question. We don't ask from a place of judgment. We ask from a place of bold curiosity. So when you look at every chapter in this book that goes into, at the end of it, questions to ask yourself, questions to ask others, questions to ask your team, they're all questions. They're open-ended questions. A powerful question is an open-ended question. So that's what they are. They're open-ended questions that evoke thought, that evoke more curiosity, that move people towards solution versus keeping them feeling stuck in a rut or feeling defensive. right? If you're asking a question of someone and they're acting in a way that's defensive, then you want to, and my suggestion to you as Coach Tammy is to pause, push the pause button, and ask yourself, how am I asking this question that might be evoking the negative response? Am I responsible, right? If you can come up with no, because I asked an open-ended question simply to understand, then go back and reframe the question in a different way, starting with, my intention here is to gain understanding. It's not to put you on the defense. So help me understand how I can best do that for you, because I need this question answered. And I'm hearing that you're getting defensive with me. So let me explain this way. Because I just had this happen. So I'm so glad that I'm recording this audio teaching today, because I just had this happen in a conversation with a very dear friend of mine, someone whom I'm very close to in my personal life. And I'd asked him a question about a specific topic, but I asked it from this place. I said, help me understand how I can better communicate. Ironically, this was about communication. When I'm frustrated, when A, B, and C happens, I don't want to react in a way that sounds off-putting or negative to you, but I need to understand how I can ask you questions without you feeling like you have to explain or justify to me. I just want the question answered. I don't need the justification. I'm not asking for you to have to justify yourself, because what I asked is, how can I help you when A, B, and C happens? And what this person did was went into this 5-minute dissertation. I know dissertations are longer. Stick with me here. But this 5-minute explanation about why and the history and the backup of what had happened with the specific event I was referring to. Now, I wasn't saying, why did the event happen? I was saying, I'm frustrated, so help me understand how to help you in this moment, right? And when I brought to their attention after they went through their explanation, and I said, well, thanks for the explanation, that's not what I needed. Because what I asked was, and I repeated the question that I asked, I said, did you hear judgment in that? Help me understand. No, I didn't hear judgment in that. So help me understand why you felt you needed to explain it to me. We kind of had to dial backwards. And sometimes that happens when you're in a moment where the other party isn't necessarily hearing you because they've got their own story playing. When you can remember the powerful question that you asked and the why you asked it, I wasn't accusing. I simply wanted to know how to help this person. What they heard in their defense, their defensiveness was, they heard me say, oh, well, in their mind, I was saying, you have to tell me why you did it. I didn't say why you did it. I said, how can I help you not do this? And what the explanation was nothing to do with anything other than justifying their actions. And it was a really interesting space for me to go, wow, I'm even asking powerful questions. I know how to dwell in powerful questions. And sometimes even I, in asking powerful questions, have to go back and restate the intention or restate the goal of the outcome. That is something that takes time. It takes a certain amount of finesse to get to the place where I'm listening without judgment and I'm reframing in a way to still get to my outcome. I could have gotten distracted and gone into, why are you getting defensive with me? I didn't ask that in a way. I didn't go there. I actually paused and said, so what I'm noticing is there's defensiveness. I'm not meaning to ask it in a way to get all of that explanation. I actually just need to know. And I restated my purpose. They understood what they were doing and they apologized and simply said, I'm actually not used to people being that clear with what they want to know. I got defensive thinking I had to explain myself, but you're right. That's not what you were asking. So you see, when I say that we have to educate ourselves how to ask powerful questions, there's a process in educating others that are in relationship with you on how to receive powerful questions and respond to powerful questions. Because most often people hear a question as an accusation. More often than not, and it's a sad thing for me, when I go in to work with a team that's in breakdown and nobody's communicating effectively, and we've got a lot of finger pointing and a lot of backdooring and a lot of kicking over one another's sandcastles or throwing sand in each other's eyes, right? Because we don't play in the sandbox nicely. When I go in to work in those scenarios, more often than not, I can come to, I have to peel back the layers, if you will, peel back, like peeling back the layers of an onion. I peel back the layers of the wounds, because when we're responding, and no response is still a response. So let's be clear. Even if you're working with somebody who's passive that doesn't talk, that's still a response. And we have to peel back the layers and go to a place of trying to mutually understand, but I've got to educate why I'm asking and how I'm asking the question, that it's and show them how it's different, because the listening and all of those layers in the conflict or the challenge or the breakdown, the layers of messaging that's been there that you're peeling at to get to the core, are every conversation that's come before, or every time that person's been questioned, or every time there's been an issue or a challenge. That is just one more layer that other individual has put on themselves. Are you tracking with me? And our job in being the powerful question asker is to begin to peel back those layers so that we each start listening and responding from a place of truth and authenticity, not baggage and history. So your job in asking powerful questions is at the start is often educating on what you need as an outcome, or how you need your outcome delivered, which in my case today, when this just happened on the day of recording Powerful Questions, I just witnessed it. I was like, oh my goodness, I just witnessed exactly what I want to teach on, which is we educate those that we're in relationship with how to treat us. We educate how they respond to us. We educate them through the way that we ask them questions and the way we dialogue with them. And so your opportunity here is, if you're in breakdown in your work environment, if you're in breakdown in a relationship, go back to the way that you're asking questions and listen for how others are receiving the questions that you're asking, because they're receiving it and responding from their own set of baggage. So when we can gently and lovingly expose that, not making them wrong for it, all I said was, actually, that's not what I asked. Do you remember what the question is that I asked? Well, I just thought you needed to know. No, I didn't need to. Because if I wanted to know, I said, please trust that when I want to know a why you've done something, or how come we got to that outcome, I'll ask that question. But what I asked was, help me understand how I can help you when this happens. And they were finally able to hear through the words of the question to the truth of the question I was asking. Okay. I hope that helps you. I hope that helps somebody. Somebody else needed to hear that, or I'm just going to preach myself happy today. I'm not, either way, it's a win-win for this host. All right. So powerful questions. We've talked about what they are. They're open-ended questions. They're what questions. They're tell me how questions. Tell me more questions. They're not why questions, and they're not filled with accusation. We put them in place with the whole and total soul goal of seeking to understand. So when do we use them? Well, I use powerful questions all the time. I'm voracious about asking questions. When using powerful questions, it's really there's no perfect time to just to insert always a powerful question. I use questioning so much in my daily life because it's part of what I do in my career is ask powerful questions, that I'm always asking questions. And so for me, I had to step outside myself. I'm going to be transparent for a moment. I needed to step outside myself and, okay, how would I instruct others to insert powerful questions? Like, when do they use them? Anytime you have that question pop into your head, or you're curious about something, or if you're in breakdown, or if you want to go to the next level in a conversation about what's possible, that's where you insert a powerful question. I mean, it's not like when A happens and B happens, then insert powerful question here, right? Like A plus B equals C. Well, I know that A plus B does not always necessarily lead to C. Sometimes you gotta go around the rabbit hole a little bit to get to your answer, right? So when asking powerful questions, inserting the power of pause to think about what that question is a really good tool. When to use them when you feel in conflict. I want to touch on this. I don't mean to make this all about conflict, but I do want to touch on it, that when in conflict, using powerful questions is a great tool to get out of the accusation and to get out of being able to get away from the conflict, right? Truly. It's the one way that we can, when in conflict, defuse a situation. And that powerful question is, so help me understand. What I'm asking is this, or what happened is that, and what I need to know is this, or what I'd like to know is that. And so when you start with help me understand, it diffuses the other person. Help me understand is a great opening to a powerful question, and how you finish that is truly up to you and what you want to know. So, asking a question open-ended, what were you hoping to achieve? What, if you're interviewing someone and you're wanting to ask them beyond the, what are your 1, 3, and 5 year goals? And where do you see yourself in this company? I like to ask the question, when have you experienced conflict and how did you work through it? What a powerful question to ask. It gets them thinking about a time, and you get to hear in the words that they use how they responded. Powerful questions are a great way to understand someone better. If I could teach anyone who's dating or who wants to start dating how to ask powerful questions, that I think that we would be, I think that the dating pool would probably, would really change. I'll offer that. I think that if we could start asking powerful questions, we get past the facade a lot quicker. And we get to the core of who human beings are. And in asking powerful questions, they have that much power. Good questions do. So when to use them? Anytime you have something come up in your mind that's a bold, curious thought, anytime that there's perhaps been a conflict, there's a great way to start inserting powerful questions. Okay. How? I've talked a little bit about how to use them. And again, in my book, there's over 200 powerful questions that you can ask yourself or ask others. From, this great question I'll ask you, what do you see? And if you ask this as yourself, it says, what do I see as the greatest challenge in my current situation? You can turn that around to ask that in you're doing a review, an annual review, or hopefully I'd like to think you're doing quarterly reviews with your team to make sure we're tracking toward our goals. And you could say to them, so Joe, how do you see that, what do you see as the greatest challenge in your current situation? And I'm not asking, and the thing is, I'm not asking that question because I want to sabotage Joe. I want to truly know, Joe, what do you see as your greatest challenge currently? And you just wait for the response. Imagine what that would do. Imagine yourself for a moment. Okay, let's go back to some of those annual reviews that you've had, and you get your whatever you call it, your PDP, your professional development plan, that you fill out in April, and then it's the next April, and you get to go over it with your boss or the head of HR, and you get to track how'd I do. These were my goals. Where am I at? Wah. I know they're necessary, but I would so love to get in there and refresh how we do our reviews so we can empower our workforce to be more productive than what we limit them and shackle them to in those reviews, in those annual reviews. But in that time, you've got the questions of how did I perform on a scale of 1 to 10? What do I think my performance level was? What areas of improvement do I want to make? You fill one out, your manager fills one out, and then you go through the review and you all have to sign off on it. Unfortunately, a lot of times at those moments, there's surprises that come up, but I don't want to go down that trail yet. That's for another topic and another time on how to give better reviews. But if we started asking more powerful questions in those conversations quarterly before we get to the annual one, which is, what kind of challenges do you see? I want to hear what challenges you see, because the challenges that your people are seeing, if you're a leader of a team, the challenges that your people are seeing are the challenges that that are affecting their ability and their mindset to be successful. There's a lot of work around the mindset and the limiting beliefs of our people that I go in and do and help people tackle and start reflecting the mirror on those situations. But imagine, I digress. Imagine when you were getting one of your first annual reviews as a young employee, or even as a seasoned veteran, you're getting those annual reviews, and the tension and the frustration and the discord, you don't like it. It's all this buildup. And then the review doesn't match your picture of what you thought you did. Imagine if you had had a conversation earlier in the year before the annual review came up, asking what challenges you face or the greatest challenges that you see. And you're able to openly dialogue about it. Because there's a lot of companies out there that say, oh, we have open communication. Oh, no, you don't. And you know who you are. You think you have open communication because you state it as a value. But because it's stated as a value and it hangs on the wall does not mean people are modeling it and people know what open communication to you means, or you know what it means to them. Everybody has a little different or shifted perspective on it. But yet we state it. Oh, communication is a value of ours. Really? What kind of communication? Verbal? Would you like it open? Would you like it written? Do you want the body language communication? Which type of communication are you talking about? So we're not necessarily always communicating, but when we can talk about what challenges we see earlier on, then we can begin to address them, and we all feel like we are part of the solution. And that's really what we want in our workplaces today. The tide raises all ship in the harbor. The tide raises all ships in the harbor. It's not that one goes up and 13 stay down. And it's the same way on your team. You as the leader control the tide a lot of times. And it's the up tide or the down tide. And it depends on how you're communicating. And I'll offer it depends on the quality of the questions that you ask. If you are a point and shoot leader, meaning you point and you shoot out instructions and then you move on, point and shoot, and you expect people to jump to your beat, you have a demoralized team on your hand, and you have an underperforming team on your hand that will not be able to work at the capacity that you've ever envisioned for them to work at because you are pointing and shooting out instructions. But if you become a point and ask kind of leader, and you point to the issue or you point to the task at hand, and you ask questions, and you spend 15 minutes asking questions about it, what people see is the challenge. Where do you see the opportunity? How do you want the outcome to be? What do you see the outcome being? May I share with you what outcome I'd like to see? There's a powerful question. May I share with you my thoughts and my concerns? Are you ready to receive them? Okay, we've just opened up the dialogue. In opening up the dialogue, what we do is we open up the mind's eye too. So we've automatically opened up people's thought process and the expansiveness from which they can think and operate. When we ask open-ended questions, it evokes a sense of curiosity in the person on the other side of the conversation. And when they can ask powerful questions back to you, you're having a dialogue back and forth that gets to the core so much quicker. I had one client of mine who was an engineer and from the East Coast, and he was working on the West Coast, and he had taken over a business unit and running a team. And within 6 months starting this position, the corporate headquarters, the CEO of this huge, big organization, was seeking to get him a coach, to get this president of the business unit a coach, because he was offending people with the way he communicated. And he was East Coast versus West Coast. And I remember when I met with him the very first time, is he was actually interviewing me to see if he wanted me as his coach. And he says to me, he says, you're the first person that really gets my where I'm coming from when I'm talking out here. He said, my experience on the West Coast is I ask a question and people give me this roundabout story. They never really get to answering my question. And they'll give me all the rationale or all the reason around it. Or, I'll say, so you brought purple napkins. So why'd you bring purple napkins? And they'll go through their whole shopping experience, and they'll talk about their kids' favorite colors. And they'll never actually get to, I bought purple napkins because I like purple. Okay. And I said to him, I go, yeah, I can appreciate that. That is actually frustrating. We on the West Coast are not bottom line. We don't just think in bottom line terms. And East Coast, having lived there myself, the East Coasters they really do operate from a place of bottom line, get to the point, moving on. It's that got to get to the next, bada bing, bada boom. And West Coast, we fluff things up and we talk around the point. We don't actually speak to the point. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for people who are not from the West Coast trying to learn how to work in an environment and in an office filled with people that talk around the point and they don't actually speak to the point. So one of the things as he selected me as his coach that we worked on was how to ask questions that get to the point and how to push the pause button when people start their storytelling. So pausing. So help me understand what I asked you was, and then he'll repeat the question. And what I hear you saying is, and then he goes into the story. How do those match? And you just stop and you wait for the person on the other side of the table to realize, oh yeah, they don't match. So let me answer your question. So it takes time to craft powerful questions and learn how to insert them, but they can truly change the conversation. And this client of mine transformed very quickly the level of conversations that he had, and then he could start tapping into the performance issues that were affecting the team. But you can't, it's very difficult to go after the performance issues affecting the team when the way that we communicate with each other, the way we ask questions or avoid answering questions with each other is truly the greatest impact on our success because we're not openly dialoguing. So powerful questions give us that chance to openly dialogue. And I wish that I would have, you remember I told you the story about that I had a boss one time that said, oh, Tammy, every time you come into my office and you say I have an idea, I cringe because it means more work for others. It means you're creating more work for us. And I wished I would have been able to employ in that moment a more powerful question than what I did, because I think I remember looking at this person and thinking and saying to myself, wow, she really doesn't like me. I totally personalized it. And this was many years ago. If I were faced with that same question now, it would be, so help me understand, Bonnie. When an employee comes in or a team member comes in and says, I have an idea, what part of that really truly scares you? Or what part of more work scares you? What makes you assume that I'm going to create more work? Help me understand, because if you don't want me to bring ideas that can transform our business, then I'll stop if that doesn't support the team. Like I would have gone there with her, because that's just a ludicrous thing to say to any team member. But I didn't have the tools in my toolkit that I'm giving you today, back then, that I have now. So when faced with those moments and someone pushes back on you, ask them a powerful question. And I'll tell you, start with help me understand. Seek to understand is important. Know your why. Know the driving force behind what you want to know, why you're asking the questions. And in asking powerful questions and using them, I would offer this. Be willing to name the pink elephant in the room. Be willing to name the pink elephant in the room. Powerful questions can bring out, we all, in any team we've all ever been on, we all know that there's a pink elephant. There's often that one that stands in the corner of the room, that one thing that nobody really wants to talk about. And when we can get there the way we can best expose it, and this is a great tool for you to use, is asking some powerful questions. So let's say that the pink elephant in the office is that, Frank in the office does not respond to email and he doesn't listen to his voicemail. So he's really not communicating. And we have a culture in the office where we communicate by email and we leave voicemails for each other when it's critical need. And if Frank's not responding, and Frank happens to be the manager, so we come into meetings and the manager's going, well, how come I didn't know? And why didn't you tell me? And I went to this, into this meeting with the corporate head, at corporate, and they were filling me in on information that was happening in my office and nobody told me. I was embarrassed. And so he's very angry. If you can be that bold question and be that powerful question asker in that moment to expose the pink elephant, that Frank's the pink elephant, him not asking or checking his email and listening to his voicemail. So he's staying abreast. That's the pink elephant nobody wants to address, right? So one of the best questions you could ask in that moment is, so Frank, may I ask a question about that myself? And Frank's going to say, yeah, if you're going to tell me if it's going to help us get to the bottom line of it, you bet. Then you say, so Frank, what I'm noticing is that we're sending a lot of information out in email and in voicemail to you that isn't getting read and that isn't getting listened to. Now, I know how busy you are, Frank, so help me understand, what would the better avenue for us be to communicate with you? Now, do you see what I did just there? I exposed the pink elephant that nobody wants to talk about. I didn't blame or make it wrong. I actually affirmed, I know you've got a lot on your plate. I know you've got a lot going on, so help me understand how I can best serve you. What would be the better way? Now, Frank comes back and says, no, just go ahead and email it to me. That's fine. But Frank, I've done that, and I can show you that we've sent a series of emails on this very topic, and if you're not getting that information, then we have a breakdown somewhere. So should we check our email server? What would be the best solution? I'm just trying to find a solution to best support you, Frank. Tell me what that looks like. Please help me understand. You're not accusing him. You're not making him wrong. And you're not doing it with attitude. Let me be clear. I don't ask powerful questions with a tone or an attitude. If you have a tone in your voice that's ridiculously rude or sarcastic, that's where you push your own internal pause button and you don't ask the question. You wait until you justify in your mind how you really need to be speaking to this person. Okay? So that's what I want to say about asking powerful questions, that you name the pink elephant, be willing to do that. Because when we can be willing, be bold enough to ask that powerful question from the place of pink elephant, going to expose it right now, and bam, there it is. All of a sudden, we've shifted the tone in the office. And it's not a tone to accusation. It's a tone to help me understand. And even in the pink elephant, even if it's your boss, they have pink elephants too that they can't see. They have those blind spots, those scotomas that they can't see. And they need a powerful team around them of not yes people, but of help me understand and how can I support you and help me to help you best serve you kind of attitude. That's when our teams truly flourish. Because when we mutually have that one for another, that's where that tide raises all ships in the harbor really comes into beautiful harmony, because we're moving in a direction that supports everyone at the table, not just one sole individual. It supports all of us and getting the results that we say that we want to produce. So be willing to ask powerful questions, open-ended questions, anytime there's a pink elephant. When in conflict, implement the powerful questions, but have your pause button right there with you. Powerful questions can transform the way that we are in a conversation with one another. Powerful questions, without accusations always, can also transform a conflict, a situation of conflict. It can transform an emotional conversation as well. And powerful questions for those in your team that might have a victim mentality, that might have a victim mindset, and you know who they are, who like to point fingers and blame everybody else, and it's a circumstance of everybody else that's causing them to underperform. Open-ended, powerful questions leave them no room to be a victim. Powerful, open-ended questions leave them no room to be a victim. They can't help but to overcome that victim way of thinking to answer the question that you've asked. And when you just keep reframing it and drawing them back to the question at hand, when they have no place to hide out as victim, then if that's something that's just so part of their DNA, they'll move on to a different opportunity and they'll find a different job. Or you've just transformed the way someone else lives their lives because you've not given into the victim. You've actually challenged them through the way you ask powerful questions of them to step up into their bold truth. So powerful questions have the ability to not only transform relationships and conversations, but to truly transform the lives of people. I've seen it done. I've worked in this industry for a long time. I've seen how it's done. And it's a beautiful, beautiful tapestry that we weave through the relationships that we have and the depth of the powerful question that we ask. I want to thank you so much for joining me in the Sandbox today in our brand new recording studio as I record the intro and outro video for you. And then you got to listen to the audio of that really great message around powerful questioning and the strategy, how to use them, why they're important for every one of us. And for you as a leader to take the time to teach that to your team is going to be an invaluable tool that I know will pay off in huge dividends for you. So thank you again for joining me in the Sandbox. And I hope that you will take some time to share this episode with a colleague or a friend that you think could truly benefit from the content that we shared around powerful questions today in the Sandbox. And I want to also encourage you to head on over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. I want you to click like, yes, and reshare and comment on the value and that you took away from this episode this week. You know, third-party affirmations go a long way in today's world economy, and I'd be honored if you would take a moment to share the value that you gained from spending time in the Sandbox today. So thanks again for joining me. And leader, I want to remind you, as I say every week, leadership isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you grow into. And I celebrate that you took time today to grow into your next level of leadership in the Sandbox. I'll see you next time in our new studio. Make it a great day.